In the heart of South America, where sunlight bleeds through endless green and shadows whisper across ancient roots, lies a world older than memory, a realm untouched by time, where rivers wind like serpents through an emerald abyss and the trees stand as living monuments to forgotten civilizations. This is the Amazon rainforest, not merely a jungle, but a breathing labyrinth of myths, secrets, and silence. Beneath its dense canopy, beyond the reach of maps, dwell stories that have never been told and questions that no man has dared to answer. For over 55 million years, this vast wilderness has hidden its truths, from lost cities swallowed by vines to creatures whispered of only in native tongues. Some say the forest remembers, others say it never forgets. Tonight, you and I journey together. We leave behind the modern world and step quietly into the unknown, into a place where every rustle of leaves could be history moving and every silence could be sacred. Welcome to the oldest secrets of the Amazon rainforest. The story begins now, deep in the western Amazon basin, where the canopy forms a ceiling so thick that even sunlight forgets how to reach the ground. A secret has been sleeping, not for decades, not for centuries, but for 1,000 years or more. Long before conquistadors set foot on South American soil, before Western maps dared draw the borders of the green abyss, there were cities here. Great cities, not of stone like the Inca, not of gold like the myths whispered by European explorers, but cities of earth and fire, born from hands now nameless and buried beneath the vines in the weight of time. For decades, science dismissed the idea that any real civilization could thrive in such a brutal environment. The soil was poor, the jungle too wild. Any tribes found were small, scattered, transient. Surely nothing grand could have stood here. But in the early years of the 21st century, something changed. Satellites, piercing through clouds and leaves with infrared eyes, began to see what humans could not. Beneath the sea of trees, patterns emerged, too perfect to be natural. Lines that ran straight for miles, circles carved into earth, giant squares like ghostly footprints. These were not formations, they were foundations. Archaeologists called them geoglyphs. They called them proof. Proof that long ago a forgotten people reshaped the Amazon, built ceremonial centers, dug canals, raised platforms from compacted clay, and perhaps most astonishing of all, they built pyramids. Not the towering monoliths of Egypt or Mesoamerica, but still massive, still intentional. Earth mounds 3 stories high with flat tops and sacred stairways. Not one, not two, but dozens, spread across the landscape like stars fallen to the forest floor. One such mound in the Brazilian state of Acre had been mistaken for a natural hill for centuries, but when it was finally excavated, a staircase was revealed, leading down into red clay chambers scorched by ritual fire. Charcoal was found, ashes, remains of pots and bones, no writings, no names, only the smoke of memory lingering in the soil. Who were they? No one knows their true name. They left no known language, no books, no temples of stone. But the scale of their work, the roads, the symmetry, the engineering, speaks of a people who understood the stars, the rivers, and the rhythm of the jungle. A people who created terra preta, the dark, fertile soil that remains alive even now, generations later. They farmed in abundance. They shaped the land. They worked with the forest, not against it. And then they vanished. Disease brought by invaders, a collapse of trade or faith, the wrath of gods or nature, we cannot say. But when they disappeared, the jungle moved back in, slow and patient. Vines coiled over the altars, trees split the sacred walls, creatures made homes where councils once met, until even the memory of those people faded into myth and myth into silence. But silence is not absence. The forest remembers. And now, with satellites and science, and with questions we are only beginning to ask, we are hearing its voice again. Whispers buried in the earth, shadows shaped like cities, and the unmistakable footprint of something vast, intelligent, and ancient beneath the green sea of the Amazon. This was never an empty place. This was never a forgotten land. It was a civilization, lost, yes, but not erased. In the heart of the forest, where the rivers twist like ancient veins and the mists drift like forgotten breath, there is a story older than stone, carved not with chisels, but with silence. They call it Yakumama, the mother of waters. For some, she is a myth, a giant serpent said to sleep beneath the rivers, guardian of sacred places, punisher of those who disturb the balance. But for the forest tribe, she is not just a tale. She is law. She is memory. She is the reason some streams are never crossed and some paths are never walked. But what if she was more? In the early 1970s, a team of explorers led by Brazilian researcher Paulo Rodrigues stumbled upon a clearing deep within the Javari Valley. They weren't searching for serpents. They were looking for electromagnetic anomalies, strange pulses that had been picked up by aircraft instruments, signals that had no source yet refused to fade. What they found was something no one expected. In the clearing stood a structure, circular, symmetrical, too deliberate to be natural. Stones had been arranged in a spiral pattern, with an altar-like platform at its center. Not carved stone, these were smooth river rocks, dragged miles from their source and set with astonishing precision. The area hummed with a faint charge, barely detectable but constant. Compasses spun erratically. Animals would not cross its edge. They named it the Spiral of the Snake. Local tribes warned them. This was a forbidden place, they said, where the Yakumama had once risen in fire and thunder. A place where the sky had opened and a being of light descended in silence, cloaked in wind. The tribes described it not as a monster, but as a messenger, a serpent not of flesh but of knowledge. It came, it taught, and it vanished, promising to return when the world was ready. But the warnings were ignored. The team camped near the site for 3 nights. On the 4th morning, their radios failed. Birds went silent. The jungle itself held its breath. And then came the sound, a low-frequency rumble, like the growl of the earth itself. It lasted only seconds, but in its wake the forest trembled. Branches cracked. Water surged. One team member vanished without a trace. The others returned, shaken and silent. None of them spoke publicly again. Years later, satellite scans would again detect faint radiation from the same area. Not natural, not man-made. A pulse, as if something buried was trying, slowly, to wake. Was it a machine? A beacon? A relic of a people who once knew how to speak to the stars? Or was it something older than technology? Older than even language? The forest doesn't say. It only watches. To this day, the spiral remains, partly overgrown, partly visible. The tribes still speak of it in hushed tones. They say the Yakumama sleeps there still, coiled beneath the soil, dreaming of the time when the world was younger, when the rivers ran red with clay and the sky sang with fire. And they say that one day, when the pulse grows stronger, when the stars align as they once did, the signal will rise again. Not as a warning, but as a summons for those who dare to listen. Beneath the layers of leaves and centuries, beneath the soft, low moment by countless rains and fallen stars, there is something no one dares to name aloud. A city, not built by any people we know, not remembered by any history we trust. The old shamans call it Akakor, the hidden city of the first fire, a place that existed long before the Incas, long before even the tribes of the forest. They say it was not found but planted, grown from the ground like a seed of stone and gold. In 1971, a man named Tatunka Nara appeared in Brazil. He claimed to be the last prince of Akakor, a city that lay deep beneath the Amazon basin. He spoke of tunnels that stretched for hundreds of miles, of temples lit by crystals, of machines that had not rusted in 10,000 years. He spoke German fluently, Portuguese awkwardly, and answered no questions with real clarity. But he had maps. He had scars. And he had eyes that seemed too ancient for his skin. Many called him a fraud. And yet, the disappearances began. An Austrian journalist named Karl Brugger followed him, interviewed him, believed him. In his book, The Chronicle of Akakor, Brugger published details of a subterranean civilization, one untouched by time, one guarded by the earth itself. Then in 1984, Brugger was shot dead in Rio de Janeiro. No suspects, no motive, nothing stolen, just silence. Expeditions that try to follow the paths Tatunka described often returned empty-handed, or not at all. Equipment failed, porters fled. One geologist reported finding a stone stairway beneath a collapsed section of the jungle floor, perfectly cut, descending into darkness. When he returned months later with a larger team, the site had vanished under new growth, as if the forest had swallowed it whole. But the legend persisted. The city beneath the roots, a sanctuary of a people who had fled the surface after a great war, not between tribes, but between worlds. A war of fire in the sky, when the rivers boiled and the sun screamed. The survivors did not die. They descended, they hid, they waited, and some say they still wait. Local lore speaks of the Muku, pale figures with glowing eyes who sometimes appear in the deepest parts of the jungle, whispering in forgotten tongues, vanishing like mist. They do not harm unless provoked, and they do not forget. The jungle around these stories behaves strangely. Trees grow in perfect circles. Birds do not sing. Night falls faster than it should. Even time seems to slow. Explorers report feeling disoriented, as if walking in a dream. Compasses refuse to work. Lights flicker. And then there are the dreams. Those who camp nearby speak of visions, of staircases that descend forever, of songs that come from stone, of walls that breathe. One man claimed he saw the city itself, towers of polished basalt, gardens of silver, and a throne that pulsed with light. He awoke screaming and never returned to the forest. Is Akakor real? Or is it the echo of a memory older than memory itself? Perhaps it is both. For in the Amazon, the line between myth and truth is not a line, it is a doorway. And sometimes if the forest chooses you, the door opens. But remember, once open, not all doors can be closed. Long before GPS satellites and jungle helicopters, long before compasses could pierce the green veil of the Amazon, there were maps. Maps that shouldn't exist. Maps etched on stone, drawn on animal skin, carved into memory. Maps that pointed not to places, but to truths the world was never meant to remember. The most famous of these is the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral. It shows the coast of South America in uncanny detail, so accurate that modern cartographers are still baffled. But that is not the mystery. The mystery lies farther south. For on this map is something that should be impossible. Antarctica, drawn not as a frozen wasteland, but as a warm, green landmass free of ice. And the only time that would have been possible was over 6,000 years ago. How did a 16th century admiral know this? Piri Reis himself wrote in the margins of the map that he compiled it using older charts, very old charts. Some, he claimed, came from the Library of Alexandria. Others, he said, were from maps drawn before the Great Flood. But who made those original maps? Some believe these were the remnants of a lost civilization, one that predated Egypt, Sumer, and even Atlantis. A culture of seafarers and astronomers who charted the world in an age before history. A culture that may have known of the Amazon's secrets and encoded them in ink, in stone, and in myth. One such myth comes from the Marajoara people who lived at the mouth of the Amazon centuries before Europeans arrived. Their pottery shows rivers flowing in unnatural patterns, animals not native to the forest, and most bizarrely, stars aligned with cities that no longer exist. Their maps were not just of land, but of time, of movements in the heavens that guided those who lived beneath the trees. And then in 1976, a Brazilian survey plane captured infrared images above a stretch of jungle near Acre. What they found shocked the world. Beneath the thick canopy were geometric earthworks, massive squares, circles, and causeways spanning kilometers. Too precise to be natural, too vast to be ignored. But they had never been recorded, never seen from the ground. They matched no known culture. No written history described them, but ancient maps hinted. A monk in the 13th century drew a scroll titled Mundus Sub Flumen, the world beneath the river. It showed a vast jungle and hidden within symbols that resembled those same earthworks. But the scroll was dismissed as fantasy until now. Could these have been roads, cities, ritual spaces, or something else? Perhaps they were markers, coordinates, to places that no longer exist, but once connected something immense. Perhaps these maps were not made to guide feet, but to awaken memory. Memory of a time when the jungle was not just a place, but a library of stone and silence. Today, the earth beneath the Amazon still holds hundreds of undiscovered geoglyphs. Every year, more are revealed, not by explorers, but by fire. Illegal deforestation scorches away the forest's skin, revealing the bones of a past no one wrote down. What else waits beneath the trees? What other maps, forgotten and silent, lie buried beneath roots and rainfall? Perhaps the greatest maps were not drawn with ink, but with intention. Etched by hands that knew time would try to erase them, yet believed the jungle would someday give them back. And so it does, one scorched field at a time. They do not move, yet they speak. They do not see, yet they remember. The trees of the Amazon rainforest have stood for millennia, unmoving witnesses to the rise and fall of civilizations, to blood spilled beneath their roots, and to prayers whispered into their bark. But what if they remember more than we imagine? Modern science has begun to uncover something the shamans already knew. Trees communicate. Through fungal networks in the soil, through chemical signals in the air, through vibrations and subtle frequencies. The Amazon is not a forest. It is a networked intelligence, a living organism composed of billions of cells disguised as trunks, leaves, and vines. And it listens. For centuries, tribal elders have spoken of the hum beneath the forest, a low, rhythmic sound that comes not from any creature, but from the forest itself. They call it the breath of Yara, the spirit of the jungle. When someone dies in the forest, the elders say the trees mourn. When someone prays with true intent, the canopy listens. But not all voices are welcome. There are places deep within the Amazon where the trees grow in unnatural spirals, where the air is thick and unmoving, where sound seems to vanish. These are the silent groves, regions avoided even by the bravest hunters. No birds sing there, no insects buzz, only a quiet so complete it feels like drowning in nothing. In 1993, a team of researchers from São Paulo University entered one such grove near the Rio Purus. Their goal, to measure soil acidity and sample plant DNA. What they found instead were trees with impossible traits, leaves that absorbed sound, bark that resisted all cuts, and growth patterns that formed perfect concentric rings, as if the trees were following instructions. But whose instructions? Old tales tell of the Curupira, a forest spirit with backward feet who guards the ancient trees. He confuses hunters, turns trails to mazes, and punishes those who take without offering. Folklore? Perhaps. Yet GPS devices malfunction in Curupira zones. Compasses spin, batteries drain, voices are swallowed mid-sentence, and sometimes people vanish. But the greatest mystery lies in the heartwood. In 2001, a single mahogany tree over 800 years old fell during a lightning storm near Manaus. When loggers examined the rings, they discovered 3 years unaccounted for. Not missing, but overwritten, as if something had reset the tree's internal memory. Dendrologists were baffled, but among the Yanomami, it was no surprise. The forest forgets only what it chooses to forget, one elder said. When it does, something terrible has been hidden. What might it be hiding? There are whispers of trees that move, not visibly, not like animals, but slowly, imperceptibly, guided by intention. Trees that migrate to protect something or guard it. In 1967, a missionary station deep in the jungle reported that a circle of trees had grown inward over several years, tightening like a noose around a clearing. Within that clearing were bones, not animal, not quite human. The report vanished. The forest closed over the station, and the whispering began again. Those who live closest to the trees say they hear things in dreams, voices in forgotten dialects, names they've never learned, warnings in songs they've never heard. They say the trees are not only remembering, but waiting for something or someone, perhaps for the return of those who once walked among them, not explorers, not scientists, but the first ones, the builders, the dreamers, the ones who carved stone with sound and left no graves behind. If the jungle holds their memory, the trees are the librarians, and in their whispered rustle, their midnight creaks, and their silence deeper than death, they are telling us something. We just haven't learned how to listen. They said it was only a myth, a city of stone swallowed by vines, roads paved with gold dust, towers taller than the trees, a place whispered of by conquistadors, mocked by historians, and erased by time. They called it. For centuries, explorers vanished chasing it. From Francisco de Orellana in the 1500s, whose starving men claimed to glimpse walls rising above canopy, walls that later melted into jungle, to Colonel Percy Fawcett, who in 1925 walked into the green labyrinth with maps and a dream and never returned. All for a city that could not be seen, could not be proven, only felt, only believed. But what if it was never truly gone? What if it simply hid? In 2009, satellites scanning a remote corner of the Brazilian Amazon near the Tapajós River revealed geometric patterns, circles, squares, lines too precise for nature. Archaeologists on the ground uncovered what locals had always suspected: giant earthworks, ancient roads, canals, and foundations buried under centuries of growth. Not a single city, a network of them. The jungle had not swallowed the cities. The jungle had grown from them. Carbon dating placed some of these sites to over 1,000 years old. The scale suggested central planning, advanced agriculture, and a population in the hundreds of thousands, perhaps more. Suddenly, the myth of Z didn't seem so mythical, but the true unseen city is still deeper. There are tales guarded by the most isolated tribes of the city that dreams, a place that appears only to those the forest accepts. No roads lead to it. No drone can map it. It is not a ruin, it is alive. Shamans say it moves, shifts, breathes, that its walls are formed not of stone but of memory, that to enter, you must first forget the world outside. Forget hunger, ambition, ego, until you are only a vessel and the city may fill you. Some believe it lies beneath the tepui, the flat-topped mountains where the clouds hang low and the trees never stop humming. Others speak of a lagoon, perfectly circular, where moonlight never reflects and birds refuse to fly overhead. In its center, the eye of the forest, a portal, or perhaps a mirror. In 2017, a botanist named Luisa Ferraz spent 4 months mapping flora in a restricted zone near the Peruvian border. On her final day, she stumbled upon an unnatural clearing, perfect symmetry, concentric rows of trees, and a central stone platform covered in moss. Her camera malfunctioned. Her GPS spun. Her notes, when later found, contained drawings of symbols no one could translate. She was never seen again. But in her final audio log, she whispered, "I think it's watching me." Not the forest, something beneath it. What if the city is not made of stone? What if it's made of consciousness? What if those who built it before the Inca, before the Olmec, understood something we lost? A harmony between thought, earth, and spirit so complete, their greatest creation needed no walls, no metal, only presence. Perhaps the unseen city still stands, not hidden by vines, but by our inability to see. Epilogue: the forest remembers. As we leave this journey behind, the forest remains, ancient, breathing, listening. It guards its secrets not out of malice, but out of reverence, because some truths cannot be mapped. They must be earned or inherited. So next time you look upon the endless green sea of the Amazon, know this: you are not looking at wilderness, you are looking at memory, and it is watching you back. Nếu bạn muốn, mình có thể gộp toàn bộ 6 chương vào lời mở đầu